Cal Farley once said, "It's amazing what can be done for children if you're interested enough to help them help themselves." The children at Cal Farley's Boys Ranch in Girls Town, USA, are good kids that come from difficult situations. Many of these children are reacting to the pain they've experienced in their short lives, the pain of severed relationships, academic failure, and more. The staff at Cal Farley's knows that all people have 6 basic areas of life that need to be developed in order to reach their fullest potential. These areas are represented in the Cal Farley's model of leadership and service. Let's hear from staff members about how they help children rise above hard times by fulfilling their needs for safety, belonging, achievement, power, purpose, and adventure.
We met a young lady from Fort Worth, Texas about 2 years ago. She came to us with a presenting problem of being a bully. And what we know when kids bully other kids is they typically don't feel safe in their environments, and they want others to feel the same that they do. When she came to Girls Town, she continued the same behaviors, loud, intimidating language and large gestures, and really did intimidate the other children. We decided to use our equine-assisted growth and learning to help her overcome some of her fears, and we put her in the arena with 3 very large and powerful horses. She was intimidated, and as we began the sessions with her, she was loud and used large, big movements, and the horses stayed away from her. She figured out after about 4 or 5 sessions that if she were calm and quiet, maybe the horses would respond, and in fact, one did. One horse approached her, and she was able to catch the horse and put the halter on it, and even brush the horse. We continued with that for several sessions so that she could build a relationship with the horse, and at the end of our sessions with her, she was able to pick up the horse's hoof. And in doing so, she verbalized to us that she realized she didn't feel safe, the animal didn't feel safe, and others around her must not feel safe either, and that she had to take a different approach if she were going to be successful. It helped me to realize that safety is at the core of what we do. We've absolutely got to ensure that the kids feel safe in their environments and learn and grow from there.
First time I saw Riley, Riley was hiding in the shrubs out in front of the chapel during 10 o'clock Sunday school. Riley's is an outdoors kid from Colorado, and he probably doesn't belong in a small classroom behind a tiny desk. But I've watched Riley at Boys Ranch grow in a lot of ways. And this past year I had this idea. Noticed there were some under-involved students at the ranch, and I thought about us saddling up and riding horseback over to the ranch on the other side of the road and watch the sunset over the Canadian River and have a prayer time and ride back. And I needed someone to help me with it that knew the horses and the equipment. So I asked Riley if he'd help head this up, and he agreed. So first night we went out, 5 boys and about 5 million mosquitoes went over, and we prayed together and rode back, and Riley did a good job taking care of everything. And for whatever reason, the boys showed back up the next week, and there was probably about 10, and then it's 30, and there's been over 50 that have been impacted by this. And these are students that aren't involved with all the sports activities and different things going on at the ranch, so it's really met a particular need. But here's how I've seen it change Riley. Riley has grown to where not only does he take care of getting the horses ready, but he'll, in his own humble way, he'll lead prayer time. And what I've really enjoyed watching is how he treats the guys. There's a boy from New Jersey named Nick who shows up in his tennis shoes with fluorescent shoelaces, and he's scared of the horses and doesn't know how to get his saddle ready. And I watch Riley, and instead of making that boy feel foolish, Riley treats him with dignity and takes care of getting his horse ready, and that's just how Riley treats all the guys out there. So Riley may not belong in a small classroom behind a tiny desk, but Riley has become convinced that he belongs to the family of God. And through his time at Cal Farley's, I have watched Riley learn how to make others feel as though they belong.
Last year about this time I was coming out of the elementary school building and I saw one of my supervisors at the bottom of the hill, and I was wondering what was going on. So when I walked over there was a kid sitting on top of the hill. And so I said, well, let me walk up and see if I can talk to her. And that's how I met Suzanne, at the top of the hill. And it was pretty cold and dark, and there's a lot of cactus. And she said, I'm tired of being here, I'm ready to leave Boys Ranch. And I came to find out that Suzanne had been at Boys Ranch since she was 9. So she had been there a long time, and she was done with us. She said, well, there's too many rules and too many people telling her what to do. I said, well, we can work on that, but let's do it some other time instead of on the top of this hill at the middle of the night. And so she came down and we scheduled an appointment for the next day. And so I started reviewing her case, and Suzanne has a medical condition that's treatable, but she has to do a lot of things to take care of herself. And at that time she wasn't. She was being a teen and she was rebelling and saying, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. And so we had talked about how she had been in our care so long that we were really reluctant to discharge her unsuccessfully. But that was really what she said she wanted at the time. And so we talked about what we could do to help Suzanne. And we had her in a structured home for more supervision, and she really felt like that was just too much at her age, that she should be more independent. So we wound up moving her to an independent living home, and she had a lot more freedom, a lot more autonomy. And so last week I noticed we sent out an email asking for people to give feedback about whether or not she could be gold level, and that means the kid pretty much has worked themselves off our behavior management system and they can be independent in the program. And she got back a flood of emails saying how wonderful she's doing and how wonderful positive influence she is in the classroom and that kind of thing. And so this week she'll be promoted to gold level. And Suzanne's just a really good example of achievement.
The night before, TJ was picked up on the highway leaving Boys Ranch at 11:30 at night. He said that he wanted to go home and that there wasn't anything anybody could do to keep him from going home. So he was headed off into the dark of night. And I told him to get in my car, and first thing in the morning, we would figure out how we could get him home. It's interesting to me how knowledge can become power for a lot of us. And sometimes adults don't quite know how to manage that. It was important to me that TJ felt like he was in control. And so I told him, go home, go to bed, get rest. You're not going to be able to do that in the middle of the Panhandle desert, and to come see me in the morning. So he did. And so I asked TJ what he wanted, and he told me the same thing from the night before. I want to go home. And I said, do you have a plan? He said, yes, I have a plan. I said, what's your plan? He said, I can call my mom. I can run away from here. I can call my stepdad. And so we went through a process of allowing TJ to work his plan. And I talked to him about what running away would get him. And it wasn't what he wanted, which was to go home. I had a pretty good idea of what Mom was going to tell him, that home wasn't the best place for him to be, or he would be there now. And Mom was who controlled whether or not he could go home. And so I allowed TJ to go through that process. TJ had all the power and control at that point in time. And he had a difficult conversation with his mom. And I didn't interfere with that process. And I was sitting in the conference room, and TJ comes back in the conference room, obviously very upset about the phone conversation with his mom. And I said, how did it go? And he said it didn't go very well. And I said, what did your mom tell you? And he said, she told me that I needed to stay at Boys Ranch. And I said, that's not what you want to do, is it? He says, no. I said, I can understand that. That must be difficult. And I said, well, what are you going to do now? You know, we went through plan A, plan B, and plan C, and none of those plans got you what you wanted. And he said, I guess I'll just stay here and try to make the most of it. And about probably 16 months after that, TJ graduated from high school and left Boys Ranch under positive circumstances. And I think it's a lesson for all of us, because there are times when we feel like we should be the ones that are in complete power and control. But in essence, we can only control ourselves. And it gives people a tremendous amount of power and control to be allowed to have their own thoughts and go through their own processes, and sometimes the outcome is exactly what we would want it to be.
The challenge course is a series of elements where we start on the ground and we eventually work our way up to the highs, where we teach the girls about harnessing in, and we have a belay system attached to them and all those sorts of things. One of the ways that we help them get up there is we talk about the safety of the elements. One of the girls was climbing and was having a really hard time when another one of the girls said, you know, I'll go with you. And she went up there and with her, and then soon she went up with the next kid and then the next kid. And she was just telling them, you could hear her say things like, just look at me, just pay attention to me, which at this point in time was really hard because it was so cold and the ice was coming down and it was so windy and stuff out in West Texas where the wind just cuts into you. And so it was great. And then there was another young lady who stood at the bottom and who just kind of anchored the belay person, you know, always there, keeping her presence, you know, with an occasional, you know, good job sort of thing. At the end of the experience, we like to process and talk about, you know, what happened out there. And so I was asking the girl who kept going over and over again with the other girls and saying things like, just look into my eyes. I was asking her, you know, what that was about. And she was saying that she just felt like she could be the calm in their storm. If they could just focus on her, then they wouldn't notice all of the other things that were going on around her. And I thought that that was amazing because that's really, you know, what our purpose is to help them find, you know, that wisdom and that insight for themselves.
Eric is a young man that's been at Boys Ranch almost 10 years, and he's had his struggles. About 4 years ago, he saw me roll my kayak, and he expressed a strong desire to learn to do that. And so after 2 hours of hard work in the water, he was able to develop a roll. And about 2 months after that, we were on a fishing trip in Colorado at Lake San Isabel, and he asked if he could show his house parents who hadn't seen him roll. And so I cautioned him that the water was cold and he hadn't done it in a while. But he paddled over to where his house parents were fishing and successfully rolled twice for them. And in that moment, he had a sense of significance because he was able to demonstrate something that a lot of people have never even tried. And since then, he's become a resident assistant in the adventure program, where he has learned a lot of different skills in the outdoors, and he's been able to teach those to new residents that are learning about how to get by at Boys Ranch. And he's also applied what he's learning in adventure to his own life, where he has recently been accepted as a gold level resident, which is the highest level that the residents can attain at Boys Ranch.
These success stories are a reflection of the Cal Farley's model of leadership and service, which sets out to help children grow into productive citizens by giving them safety and belonging, a place to achieve, gain power, find purpose, and fulfill a sense of adventure. It's how those who are working with children today are fulfilling Cal Farley's legacy to provide a shirt tail to hang on to.